Hi, I'm Bob Vila. Welcome home again. We're still doing finish carpentry, and today we're going to show you how to create an elaborate cornice molding made out of wood. We're also taking you on a field trip. It's not all carpentry today. We're going to go to Newport, Rhode Island to visit the Isaac Bell House, which has some of the most beautiful interior paneling you'll see anyplace. And when we come back, we're kind of going to do a little knockoff of what we see there to create a paneled entryway that goes into my living room. Stick around. It's good to have you home again.
Bob Vila's home again.
Okay, we're in the dining room, and there's Bob Riley. Hi.
Hi, Bob.
How are you?
Good.
Now, the job in here is pretty elaborate to create this cornice, right? And obviously, you got to do all of it right up there on the ceiling.
Yes.
So you've done the most important thing, which is to lay out your sawhorses around the perimeter of the room and throw up your planks so that you don't have to worry about benches or ladders.
Right. Well, we're going to be up here for a while, so we want it good and safe and comfortable so we can walk around.
Yeah, it's not. It's a complicated cornice molding, and it's also a complicated room. It's not four sides.
Right. We've got a bunch of different angles going on.
This room actually has 1, 2, 3 walls, and then one wall that's 3-sided. So it's actually 6 walls in here.
Yes. Yeah.
Challenging, Riley.
Yeah, plus, it's a 5-piece molding that the architects has got us putting up.
Let's look at this. So this is the ceiling up here, and we've got a stock crown molding that we got from our buddies here at Anderson McQuaid, and then you've got a flat piece of stock, 2 pieces of filler. What's the fifth?
Then it's got this dental molding right on the bottom.
A dental molding, which
Right.
of course will go on the bottom, and which echoes the dental molding that's on the built-in hutch here in the
Exactly.
room. Yeah.
Right.
That's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be nice.
How do you get started?
Well, we've already snapped our lines. We know where it's going to be going up here, and we had to be careful of how we're going to get over this window. But it's going to sit like that.
And it goes right across the whole top of the window?
Goes across the top of this window. We initially had a piece of scotia in here, but we eliminated that because the distance between the ceiling and the top of the casing is 3/8 of an inch off from one end to the other. So we've determined
Stuff like that happens in 100 years.
It happens. So this way here, you won't be able to lose it, and your eye won't really pick it
Now,
up.
where does this dental molding go, though? On the very bottom?
When we're done, right, the dental will sit right in there.
Okay.
It's very nice.
That is nice. So what did I just interrupt? What were you working on over there?
What I'm doing, I'm trying to determine what this angle is here. So I just bisected this point here because the first piece we want to put on is over the fireplace. I don't want any joints in here.
Okay.
And there's 2 different angles on either end. And the way we did this was after snapping these lines, I've got a line through here, and I'll just take a bevel square and set it on the wall. And this will be our starting point for determining this angle. Yeah, if you could just set that in the...
We'll do a little test cut?
Right, yeah. Just
Okay,
set that,
all right.
set the blade to that angle.
Okay. Now, the miter box here is going to allow us to kind of replicate what he's done, but we're still kind of looking at a rough situation. We're trying to estimate. It looks to me like it could be around 34 degrees.
Sounds...
I'll make a test cut
Okay.
with a piece of scrap, and you can just flip them and see.
Okay. Okay, gee, that's not too bad, really. It looks like...
Close. Let me adjust it maybe down to maybe a degree or 2.
I'd say try whatever you've got there, 1.5 less.
1.5 less.
Right.
Right. So I'm going to go from 34 down to 33, 32 and a half.
Oh, that looks good.
Yeah, that looks pretty tight.
Okay, so what did you have that at?
That's at 32.5 degrees.
Okay.
And
Good.
that determines the inside cut there.
Right, so the first piece we're going to be putting on is right over the fireplace here.
Very good. All right. This one is 11 feet, 1.5 inch. And of course, it's the crown molding, which goes right up against the ceiling, against your blue line there.
Yeah.
How's that look?
That looks great.
Okay, and the trick is we don't want to nail very close to the end because we might split the wood. We just want to come up maybe 1/2 inch up, 5/8 of an inch. And then, of course, we'll use a nail set to set it farther. And Riley?
Yeah.
Okay. Putting in a 6-penny nail there. I'm just using a 4-penny over at this end.
Right.
Anyway, we have to take a break. Please stick around after these messages. We're going to be in Newport, Rhode Island, visiting the Isaac Bell House. We're in Newport, Rhode Island, on Bellevue Avenue, a busy street. We're really in a town that represents the Gilded Age. This was the playground of the idle rich at the turn of the century in the 1890s. We're going to be looking at the Isaac Bell House. Our host, John Mesick, preservation architect.
Bob.
Good morning. How are you, John?
Fine.
Now, before we get into talking about this house, you have quite an impressive list of projects that you've been involved with. Tell us about some of them.
Well, you filmed a few years ago Monticello,
Right.
where we restored Jefferson's roof in time for his 250th birthday.
Indeed.
And then we moved on to Poplar Forest, his retreat at Lynchburg, Virginia, where we've been working a number of years.
And what are you doing right now besides the Isaac Bell House?
Well, we're also working out in Wisconsin at Frank Lloyd Wright's Taliesin, his
you-
great home in the hills of Wisconsin.
Some very heady addresses. Now, tell us about Isaac Bell. Who was he, the man that built this house?
He was a cotton merchant who retired at the early age of 32. He made his fortune and decided to take up residency in Newport.
And this is 1880?
Yes, he starts the house in 1881. He moves in 1883.
Okay, and how did he get hooked up with the McKim, Mead, and White, the kind of rebellious young architects that they were?
Well, they all were in their 30s, except White was 28 at the time. But in 1879, McKim had designed the Newport Casino just down Bellevue Avenue
The
here.
casino, of course, is one of the most famous structures in Newport. Tell us a little bit about that. How was it used? It wasn't a gambling hall.
No, it was more of a social club. There was tennis there, and still is the Tennis Hall of Fame to this day.
And what was revolutionary was the use of shingles and different styles of architecture
That's
blending.
right. It, for the first time, pulled together a lot of things that had been in the air at the time. Queen Anne revival in England. It was very influential here in the 1870s. The stick style was dying. Victorian verandas and millwork. But McKim had been looking at colonial architecture for nearly a decade and photographing it.
Now, you can't really tell much because of the house's condition right now, but you have a photograph that does give us an idea of what this house looked like just a year ago in terms of the masses and the shapes. Can you describe it for us?
Surely. Unfortunately, you're seeing it at a very ugly stage, but this is as it was 2 years ago. And you'll notice it sits on the corner of Bellevue and Perry Street. The design is very much made to fit this nice flat lawn.
And it ends with, or rather it's bracketed by
That's right.
these
The
turrets.
energy of the facade is absorbed by this projecting sleeping porch here on the second floor, or this bedroom turret down here on the
Now,
Perry Street
let's
side.
talk about the architectural restoration, because I was surprised to see all this felt paper attached to the sheathing and the side of the house. What's the story?
Well, we've taken all the shingles off the house, except on the north side, where original shingles from 1883 have survived and may for another century, because it being north, it doesn't take the beating from the sun. But on the side we're looking at now, there were 3 generations of shingles, and so in order to protect the work while we have the shingles off, we put the felt up. The felt will come off.
Okay, so that's temporary.
That's temporary. It will come off before we...
Now, this is the garden facade. Is the entry to the house along the...
It's along the side, and a roof sticks out to support the
Let's
shed.
take a closer look. You've got to admit, this is pretty odd and unusual detailing over here.
Well, it is a nautical town here, and so perhaps it's appropriate that we have sea monsters supporting the front porch roof.
But it's actually a Chinese thing, right?
I presume they were. We speculate that the tongues were painted red. Paint analysis is being done just now, and they found gold leaf around the heads. They're rather awesome. You see the teeth up there.
So they're really splendid things greeting you at the front door here. And now it's a shingle style house, but it's all brick down here, all this red brick. What's the story?
I believe they wanted to create an earthy base to the house, as well as a more shadowed enclosure to the porch.
And this is something Stanford White's done in a number of his houses.
The house across
around
the
here.
street by him has a stone base.
Okay. Now, is this one of the columns that you're...
Yes. It's going to be stripped of its paint.
I've never seen something like this. Look at it's turned to resemble bamboo,
Exactly.
I guess.
That's what we presume, another oriental feature that's been added to the house.
Yeah, so the rings and then just the slight
Swelling.
bit of a swelling on, it's beautiful work.
Well, the house is full
Solid.
of beautiful work,
Yeah.
as you'll see.
Paneling is what we're here to look at, yeah.
Come inside.
This is a pretty vast front hall, John.
It's a very welcoming space, the largest one in the house.
And now the paneling that we're looking at over here in the carving, this doesn't look like it's 1890s. What is all this?
No, we speculate that the Bells got this perhaps on their honeymoon in France. It's a Breton bed panel.
Beautiful.
A framed alcove bed in a peasant's cottage, probably.
Look at the wonderful carved birds and flowers throughout this. And so they got enough of this antique paneling to create this whole section of the fireplace wall here.
We have it all over. The whole alcove is lined with this.
Now what's behind these spindles?
Well, once it's cleaned in the restoration, you will see that it's a bright polished tin behind there, which reflected the light, of course, especially at night, and made it all come alive.
Indeed. And the fireplace must be 6 or 7 feet across, and all of it's lined with these beautiful Dutch tiles.
Bell had been our minister to the Netherlands after he built the house. Perhaps he got the tiles at that time.
Indeed. So he continues the antique paneling, but it's interrupted by these wonderful windows. Is that beveled glass?
Yes, that's prismatic glass, which you must realize caught the afternoon sunlight as it came in. It would make the rainbow spectrum.
This space will be great again, because, I mean, the rest of the room is all contemporary paneling, even the ceiling, right?
The ceiling is quarter sawn white oak. It's very difficult to come by today. Fortunately, it's survived in good condition here.
Would this have been a ceiling rosette of some sort?
Well, I think its ornamentation is half of a bed warmer pan, a brass pan, and it should be polished to a high polish, and it would reflect again the nighttime light.
Are the windows on the staircase here, are they Tiffany?
No, we have no evidence it's Tiffany. We would like to think it was Lafarge, but there's no evidence for that either. The colors really work very well with the colors that will be restored in the house.
The colors are very good. But then the golden oak is what's really unifying throughout this whole space. I mean, look at the size of these doors.
Yes,
right?
they're 4 foot wide, covering a 16-foot opening.
This is the type of paneling that we're trying to recreate, where it's basically a recessed panel, right?
Yes, and you can see that the panels have been staggered to make it geometrically more interesting when you look at the door.
Sure, and again, quarter sawn oak.
Yes.
Now, what about look at the system for sliding that was exposed? Was it meant to be exposed like this?
Yes, it's a unique thing, and you can imagine, again, the architects were having a bit of fun. They seem to be brass door wheels like you saw on New England barns.
Okay.
All finished in an ornamental Oriental fashion.
Yeah, indeed. Even down here, those brass rosettes are chrysanthemums, which would be a Japanese thing.
We see it throughout the house.
Right, right. And then the paneling continues, and what's this? Is the dining room through here?
Yes, this is the dining room with another set of sliding doors.
This one is working perfectly. Of course, there'll be some restoration to the finish, but you're very lucky that nobody painted this.
It all stayed intact, yes.
Wow, so is this all mahogany in here?
This is mahogany, Honduran mahogany. It needs to be cleaned, but it will be red-brown, a marvelous shade of red-brown. And notice the brass that has been ornamented, the hinges and so forth. Oh, here we have one of the bed warmer pans. They were mounted all over the room here. And you can see the ghost up here above the door where one was positioned, and they're around the room. What they did is they took half a bed warmer and mounted it in a brass plate.
That's a beautiful thing.
Again, high polish, picking up the nighttime light when you're at dinner.
Now, what have you got here?
Oh, this is a rendering that we have produced to show how this room, the dining room, would look when all the elements are put back into it.
So these are the bed warmers throughout the room.
That's right. And they're on rattan walls as well as the ceilings. And notice the dining room chairs. They still survive. They were in the attic of the house.
So you're lucky to have some of the original furnishings from the room.
Yes, and they will be restored. They need a great deal of care.
Yeah, they need a fair amount of restoration, but it's an interesting design.
It's apparently designed by the architects because the same chairs are found at Kingscote, adjoining house, where Stanford White did the dining room, and the same chairs.
Indeed. Now, you said a minute ago that everything was covered in straw, in rattan?
Rattan, a woven cane, if you will. Sort of raffia color. It would have been sort of pale gold. Again, shiny at night, would have picked up the light.
So it's funny that a little bit survives right in between the casings of the windows, which are so, heavy in the mahogany. And when this was new, the red of the mahogany with the tan of the raffia must have been
counterpoint.
Stunning, absolutely. And then what we've got over here is more of the same sorts of recessed panels, and he varies the sizes of the recessed panels as he goes.
The eye is always entertained in a McKinley and White interior at this period.
Well, you've got a great job ahead of you. It'll take, what, at least 2 years?
I think at least that. A year to finish the outside and a year more to do the interiors.
Thanks for the tour, John.
It's been a pleasure, Bob.
We'll be back after these messages. One of the design features from our 1897 house are the original doors, which have these panels that are somewhat horizontal in scale, and we've just seen at the Isaac Bell House a lot of wainscoting, which again has these relatively horizontal scaled panels. Here we're creating an entranceway into the living room, and we're using high-tech materials. This is a medium density overlay, a type of plywood with a paper face, which takes paint very well. In fact, some people call it signboard. And we've had poplar milled down to 1/2 inch, which we're applying to create the recessed panels. And of course, we're shooting it all in place. Danny, can I interrupt you or help you here?
Yeah.
These are the side pieces which make good spacers. You shoot it and then just go to the other side. And then do the same thing in the next case. And keep on going like this. Just pinning them in place. All right, and this piece goes on the edge. Push it up and in. And now we put in the middle pieces to create 2 panels on the top here. You got your marks there. And the second panel is horizontal, and the third one is divided again to create 2 panels. Now we're ready for moldings. Okay, and this is standard over-the-counter lumberyard moldings that Danny's pre-cut. And you pre-cut all that you'll need for the whole job, I assume. Okay, that's all there is to it. And it really is, I mean, a day's project is what it is, but when it's painted out, it's going to look like $1 million. And of course, we've done other contemporary things like make sure we have some of these little lavalier fixtures up in here so that we'll have some down lighting. But anyway, let's take a look on the second floor where more of the carpentry finish trim is being completed. Most of the second floor trim is in place. We're almost ready to turn this all over to the painters. And you can see all these poplar moldings that are in place and the picture moldings. But right over in this corner of the house, last week we were putting in the ceramic tile in the guest bath. And I wanted to give you a look because he's done a fabulous job. The shower is all finished with this beautiful Italian tile and Spanish tile, and the wainscot tile, just the old-fashioned system of installing them kind of with a broken running bond, and the circular dark blue, which again occurs down here, almost kind of creating the idea of a mopboard. And then of course look at this floor. It's just a simple detail, but it's so dramatic. And all we need here is a door. And then in the guest bedroom itself, we've stacked all of our original sash, which are back from being stripped, and they've been reglazed and repaired, and now they're being primed. The painters are busy getting them all primed so that we can install them back in the windows, get rid of the old storm windows, and prime the whole exterior of the house. This is an exciting point in time. Stick around, we got to break for some messages. Well, we've got a long way to go before moving day, but we're running out of time. Come home again next time when we're installing hardwood floors. A beautiful maple floor is in the kitchen, and then in my den we're putting down a herringbone pattern in oak. Also a tour of the Kinetico factory in Cleveland, Ohio, where they make these terrific water purification systems. And my friends from California Closets are coming to help me figure out how to best customize the master bedroom closets. Till then, I'm Bob Vila. It's good to have you home again.